Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given. Won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're faded, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Well, hello everyone. Oh, my hair is a little messy. How are you doing? I'm going to turn off this heater. And look what it did to my camera. When I turn off the heater, it bumps things around. And this seems to not be using my iPhone again. So it's not the most clear video, but you want to know what? We're going to leave it at that because it's the content that matters. I'm still experimenting with the new software. We are going to be doing my second update on Michigan. I'm going to either put up in the high bar or in the low bar where you can find, just trying to get the exact right position here, where you can find update number 1. People asked me in the past for a brief summary, and nearly everything is covered in that summary. I'm going to retread a tiny bit of ground here, but not much. Before we do, let me do the YouTube stuff. But before I do, first, because I know what some people will say, I have monetization, like ads. If you see ads on this video, they're not for me. They're for YouTube. On shows that I do that have to do with state controversies, I don't monetize them because I don't want to hear it from the haters. But if anyone does a super thanks or a super chat during the show, all of that money will be donated to the Libertarian Party. So please feel free to show your appreciation. And if you shoot me an email, I'll show you the receipt where I take the gift you gave to me and make my own free will choice to donate the entire money to the Libertarian Party, which means that I would eat any YouTube fees. But I'm fine with that. I would actually encourage you to have me incur some fees. I would love to see a big donation to the Libertarian Party come in Super Chat. But that's just to get that out of the way. But in general, one thing I will do, and I don't care what the haters say, if you like this type of content, not necessarily about Michigan, nobody likes hearing about affiliate disputes, but just the coverage of the Libertarian Party and things that are of peculiar interest to us who are a peculiar people, please do consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. And I'm going to put names here. Thank you for your donation to the Libertarian Party, Joshua. If you shoot me an email, I want to put your comment back up. I put down the wrong thing. I'm going to leave your comment up. There we go. I'll show you that I did a donation in that amount, and I thank you so, so much. We could truly use your support. Dave Davis says that I'm limited to $30,000 a year. Listen, I can't promise to pay you YouTube fees if we get a $30,000 donation. Actually, that wouldn't turn. Over the course of a year, I could. Listen, if someone wanted to give that much money in my YouTube chat, I would find a way to make a payment plan out of my own money to help match that to give to the LP. Anyway, I'm more saying that for the benefit of the haters who try to discredit the content through personal attacks. Also, again, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to this channel, and please follow me at Karen Ann Harlos on Twitter. Now, we're going to get right to the nitty-gritty. Normally, when I do a brief summary, I'm not the queen of brevity. I think that's known. I think I did 3 hours on Massachusetts bylaws at one time, or whatever. That might have been Idaho. But I've been known to do 3-4 hour shows on these things. I'm not going to do this here. This is for the people who'd like an update. The reason, however, what I was going to say is normally when I want to be brief, I don't go live because I get distracted by comments. But I wanted people to have the opportunity to ask me questions live. And I see I got a super, it's not coming up on my screen yet, and I'm going to put this up. Thank you, Lisa. Now we just raised $15 for the Libertarian Party. It is so appreciated. Honestly, it is. Of course, some of that will have to do with what I'm saying here today, but I'm going to do an aside. Here I am getting distracted. Our ballot access battles, these upcoming months, are intense. And it's, I know some people go, oh, it's because of the LNC. No, that's not the way ballot access works, but we'll get into that another show. But, we truly appreciate the funding at this point, and it helps every state. So, as I was saying, I normally do pre-recorded when I want to be brief, but I want, if anyone has questions, because this is probably, at least for a while, going to be my last substantive video on Michigan. Why? Because there's going to be legal action. And once there's legal action, you know what the lawyers tell you? Zip it. So everything I discuss today is going to be things that have already been discussed publicly, can be found publicly. You are not going to get anything out of me that has been in, I call it's executive session in the LNC. I like to call it secret session. I don't do that to be pejorative. I do that to remind boards, including the LNC, that it's secret. So I like calling it what it is. I don't like sanitized words. So I'm not going to be discussing anything we discussed in secret session. Everything I say will be public. So let's start. I normally also, when I want to be brief, write out a script. I only wrote out brief notes. But I do have alcohol, so maybe that will tamp me down a little. Oh, Wayne said this would be good. Wayne, if you're watching... No, spiced rum, I'll drink it, don't get me wrong, but spiced rum and orange juice, no bueno. No, not good. It's passable, but not good. So I want to start with a story. How about that? Settle down, kids. We're going to do story time. Imagine even in Libertopia, you can imagine it today, but let's imagine a more libertarian society than we have now. Be it a minarchy, be it an anarchy, be it even just halfway better than what we have now. Someone comes along and say your name is Jane Doe. Really, your name is Jane Doe. And they come along and, you as Jane Doe are well known in some sphere. You either have a business or a product, or in some way you have a reputation where your name carries some meaning behind it. That if somebody said, go to that restaurant because, Jane Doe from Maintown, USA recommends it, and everyone knows who Jane Doe from Maintown, USA is, the fact that you recommended it means something. Now, let's say that somebody says that, and let's say you're the type of person like, nobody knows really what you look like. Maybe you're an author, you don't get seen in public. So it's easy for someone to go around and say, you know what, I'm Jane Doe from Maintown, USA. I'm the person who wrote all those great things. Or I'm the person who did all these great deeds. And then they started opening bank accounts in your name and doing all kinds of other things. And perhaps, calling your credit card company and saying, I lost my credit card. I'm Jane Doe from Maintown, USA. And getting a credit card that you're getting the bills for now. Would you think that is wrong? Or would you say, like some very shallow, knee-jerk libertarians are saying in this Michigan situation, I think you all are starting to see the parallels. You don't own the words Jane Doe. You can't say that person's doing anything wrong. You can't own your name. Everyone who would say that in an identity theft situation like I described would say you are a barking moonbat if you don't think that is wrong. That's not even remotely libertarian to say that. But all of a sudden, we're dealing with an actual organization that has an identity. We think it's just fine for someone to say they are that organization when they're not, and then do business in the name of that organization where people think they are dealing with that organization and trying to steal the money from the actual organization and filing false paperwork and collecting money in the name of an organization you're not. That's just as wrong. That's organizational identity theft. And when someone comes along and says that's a crime, and we're going to do something about it, it's not that you're claiming that there's some magical power that you own existentially the arrangement of certain letters on a page. What you're saying is you have a right to not have people impersonate your identity, which is associated with something specific. Too many libertarians think that trademark is IP. It can be. Mostly, it's not. It's an anti-fraud measure. It's so that consumers or other people who think they are getting one thing are actually getting that thing. Not because, oh my God, you offended my thought because I thought some certain letters and a certain arrangement and you're claiming ownership of them. That is not what trademark is. And if you think, again, it can be in some cases. It's not in this one and it's not in most. And if you as a libertarian think that, I am sorry, you have a very, very shallow and immature view of what fraud is, of what IP is, and of what liberty is. There is nothing more, well, I can think of some things that are more anti-libertarian, like murder and war. Okay, let me not exaggerate. It is absolutely anti-libertarian to hand wave away identity theft. Now, if you want to argue that someone doesn't have a case, you could say, no, they really haven't stolen the identity. That's a different argument. But to say that if a person or organization literally thinks that their identity is stolen, that they shouldn't be able to do something about it, you are enabling predators and victimizing the innocent. And that is wrong. At the heart of libertarianism is justice, not morality, as some people think. Now, justice is a subset of morality, but morality is a larger issue. Libertarianism ultimately is about justice and rights. And it's neither anyone's right, nor is it just. So the vapid arguments about the Libertarian Party protecting its identity by saying you can't impersonate us and take money from people who don't realize that you're not the genuine article, to say that somehow, oh my God, that's invoking the state. Well, I'm sorry, baby doll, but we live in the state right now. That's like me saying, if your child got murdered, you can't call the police and want that person taken to justice because that's invoking the state. That's the system that we're in. If you actually believe that, you shouldn't be in a libertarian party or any kind of political party. Because guess what? A political party is a creature of the state. But we use it defensively because this is the system we're trapped in. But anyone who's actually in a political party to go, wow, you can't ever call the state. Your baloney has a first name. It's the system we're in. But let's imagine Libertopia. Let's imagine Minarchotopia. There would still be courts. There would still be civil and criminal actions. In Anarchotopia and Capistan, there would still be courts. They wouldn't be owned by a government, but they would still be backed by some kind of force. Because fraud is a form of force, and you're allowed to defend yourself against fraud. I am truly embarrassed by the shallow arguments I am seeing from some libertarians. No wonder the normies think they wouldn't want to live in our world. I wouldn't want to live in the world where you couldn't defend yourself against fraud. Now, we can make an argument that it's not fraud. That's a different argument. I already laid out the case that it's fraud in summary number 1, and I direct you there. Okay. And again, I am keeping track of the chat. So if there are like actual questions that I'm like, oh, I haven't covered that, I need to. So this is going to be, as I said, my last substantive show, unless there are legal updates that are very public that I can share. Now, let's move beyond. Well, let's not yet. The fact is also, libertarians also believe in contracts. Do you know what, under the law, and this would be the law in Libertopia too, you want to know what bylaws are? You can find case law. I could cite you case law, even from Michigan, if you'd like it, that says that bylaws are a form of contract between an organization, its leadership, and its membership. Libertarians believe in contracts. To just hand wave away, oh, you're so fussy about rules. Contracts is also anti-libertarian. If I have a contract with you and we both entered into it voluntarily, it doesn't matter that you think Clause 10 is silly. You signed it knowing or agreed to it. joined a group, but if we're doing the analogy of a contract between you and I, you agreed to it knowing that silly Clause 10 was there. You could have not entered into the contract. Since, I think it's 1983, it might be 93, but I believe it's 83. We can look it up. In other words, it's decades. The contract between the state parties and the national party has been, and state parties could have always left the year that this was passed, if they didn't like it, that there shall only be, actually this one bylaw I'm citing is earlier, but the next part came in either 83 or 93, and I'm pretty sure it's 83. There shall be only one state level affiliate in any state. I don't think anyone has a problem with that. 2, only state level affiliates shall have the right to use the term libertarian or Libertarian Party, not libertarian, that combination, or anything confusingly similar. And I think it says only state level affiliates and they're properly affiliated, like sub-affiliates, like counties or whatever states might do. They have regions or whatever it might be. This is something everybody agreed to. They could have left when this was passed by delegates at convention under our voluntary contract. So there can be only one state level affiliate. Our contract also says it's the job of the LNC to recognize who the state level affiliate is, which we have done in Michigan. You can think we made the wrong decision. Guess what? Our contract also provides for, oh my God, alternative dispute resolution with the Judicial Committee. Don't go crying about anyone going to the state when the other party to the dispute refuses to take the route that was already agreed to in the contract to resolve things voluntarily. But the contract says they have to be the ones to initiate it. And they refused. To give the brief recap, there was a dispute between libertarians in Michigan under the Michigan bylaws. The Michigan bylaws has their own dispute resolution process in their own judicial committee. The aggrieved members had their day in court before the judicial committee. The judicial committee rendered a decision. Some members didn't like it, so they just went and formed their own board. That is, in a nutshell, what happened, and some of you are defending that. And that is insane. And it is anti-libertarian. If you don't like what a judicial committee does, and believe me, I know what that feels like. The judicial committee in 2021 upheld my wrongful suspension. Do you think I liked that? What if I were the chair? And let's say the same thing happened, but I were the chair. And then the judicial committee upheld my suspension. Do you think and we found out later that the suspension was wrong because it got overturned by delegates at convention, which means I was right all along. But instead of the secretary, I was the chair. Would I have been proper to say, well, I'm just going to form a new LNC? No, I wouldn't have been, because I voluntarily agreed to this process, even when I thought it sucked. And let me tell you, getting the national JC ruled against me sucked. It was a stab in my heart to have this party that I loved deny me justice. But I knew this is what I agreed to, and I worked within the process. Now, the aggrieved members who did not like the JC decision, which I can completely, again, have empathy for, exercised their rights and called for a special convention in order to revisit that decision, to do the thing they wanted to do. They called for a special convention and never went to it. This whole thing is so crazy that anyone could defend. It's obviously partisan. And let me tell you something. In a weird way, I almost wish this would happen, though I don't wish it to happen. But I'm going to tell you, I have this weird fantasy, because everyone thinks this is a caucus thing. But I have this weird fantasy that in some smaller state where it doesn't have as big of an impact, I almost wish some Mises Caucus people would just turn out to be complete corrupt bastards and do like something super dirty and start a parallel board so that I can prove to you that I don't care what caucus you're a part of. I will defend the legitimate board under their bylaws. I do not give a flying fudge what group you belong to whatsoever. What's going on in Michigan with this parallel board is inexcusable. I'd like to tell you another story. Let's go into pretend land again. Let's say your convention is coming up next week, let's say. And some people, as is inevitable, doesn't like the results of your convention. Do you realize that if Michigan is just let go, what that is permission now to do? So say your convention is next week. Some people are going to leave that convention unhappy. It always happens. Now, if Michigan is let go, they don't even have to come up with an excuse, because there was no excuse, as you could tell by the changing stories in Michigan. So let's say I'm a member of your state party. I go to your convention. Let's say I don't like who's elected as chair. Me and about maybe 12 other people, including some former board members, don't like who was elected as chair. So we just decide, those bastards that voted in that person we don't like, they're not really libertarians. So it's our duty, it's our solemn obligation to ignore the bylaws and say that we are the real libertarians of X state, and we're going to form our own board and do something about it. Do you realize that's what's next? Do you? Do you realize that that's what's next? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see this. And do you realize this could be your state next? Do you want that? I don't. And if you think it's far-fetched, I see it happening. I see maybe some inklings of it here in my own state. I see inklings of it in another state that I'm not going to name. You win some, you lose some. You work within the process. Now, last LNC found out, let's back up a little bit. Before the Libertarian Party of Virginia had its psychotic moment, there was an affiliate, a sub-affiliate, county level I think it is, within the Libertarian Party of Virginia that was promoting Trump and Trump values. And whatever other, at least, let me say allegedly, because I wasn't part of their hearing or their due process or any of that. I'm taking the word of people in Virginia, so let's just say allegedly. The Libertarian Party of Virginia certainly believed so. So they disaffiliated that county. Once they did that, that county no longer had the right to call themselves an affiliate. And this was the Tidewater Libertarian Party. They were disaffiliated, and the Libertarian Party of Virginia affiliated a new group in the same geographic area called the Hampton Roads Libertarian Party. The Hampton Roads Libertarian Party is the legitimate affiliate. Tidewater said, LOL, okay, we're going to continue doing our bad behavior and promoting things that the LPVA felt was Trumpian, and we're going to continue to call ourselves the Libertarian Party. They even filed fraudulent paperwork with the state of Virginia. The last LNC was incensed at this, rightly so. I knew about it because this had been going on for a while. During my period of exile, in their lame duck months, for whatever reason, the past LNC, not this one, the past LNC moved to file a trademark suit against the Tidewater Libertarian Party. So stop it with, oh my God, this particular LNC, it's just so authoritarian. No. Our first trademark suit, actually, a lot of you might not know, the Libertarian Party had a trademark suit about a decade ago, too. Nobody talks about that either. It was a dumbass one that they lost. They didn't lose it on trademark grounds. They lost it because They lost it because it was a stupid case. And I think we filed an amicus. We might not have even have been a party, but I'll give you the summary. It was a dumbass case where we tried to sue the state of Washington for putting the words prefers Libertarian Party on the ballot and was claiming a trademark on that. I'm sorry, dumbasses. You can't stop someone from saying they prefer a certain party. Yeah. I prefer Mountain Dew. Pepsi can't come after me. I'm not claiming to be Mountain Dew, whatever. It was a stupid case, and whoever advised them to do that, whatever. The crux of the case wasn't about trademark, though. The crux of the case was actually good. The crux of the case was freedom of association. It was against anti-top 2 primary. It was that parties should be able to nominate their own candidates. The crux of the case was good, and that got lost, too, by the way. But people forget about that. So, a real moderate LNC filed a dumbass suit a while ago. But the last LNC authorized a trademark suit against Tidewater Libertarian Party. It didn't get filed till this term, but that's because it was ordered by last term and we did not rescind that order. So it got filed this term. So this is something not unusual. Now, there's something a lot of you might know about trademark. This isn't, somebody once said to me on Twitter that this is the primary tenet of trademark, and it's not. I just love Twitter lawyers. But it is a tenet. It's a rebuttable one. It's not as absolute as people think. But in general, if you have a trademark, you have to defend it. That's a general rule. There's all kinds of exceptions to it. But those of you who don't like Trump and think that we should go after Tidewater for being a bunch of Trumpians claiming to be the Libertarian Party, you do realize that if we don't defend in Michigan, you've just prejudiced our case in Virginia. Do you want us to just let Trumpians do that too? And are you going to say, oh, but the difference is that we think it's actual libertarians in Michigan and it's not actual libertarians in Virginia? That doesn't matter under the law. What matters under the law is enforcement of your trademark. Use it or lose it, baby. And we've all heard that if Trump doesn't get the Republican Party nomination, that he's thinking of going third party. Connect the dots here, people. The lack of foresight of some people is just astounding to me. You've got to be much politically smarter and have some political intuitions on unintended consequences if you're going to be in this game. The last LNC decided to enforce our trademark. That puts this LNC in the position that in order to keep from prejudicing that case, we have to be enforcing our trademark against obvious misuses. And the one in Michigan is more obvious, I think, than the one in Virginia, and that one's damn obvious. But however, the argument that, well, it's Trumpers in Virginia and it's actual libertarians in Michigan makes no difference if we're talking about fraud. Do you think libertarians can't commit fraud? Do you think libertarians can't commit murder? Do you think libertarians are Jesus or something? That we're just morally perfect beings that could never do anything wrong? And just because someone's a libertarian, they should be immune from the law? or immune from rules? That it's okay to enforce rules against those dirty Trumpers, but it's not okay to enforce rules against libertarians? Do you want to know what you sound like? You sound like the games that the duopoly is playing today, where they'll prosecute this person but not this person, or it's not okay for Trump to have secret documents and it's okay for Biden to have secret documents. No, we shouldn't be that way. So that's some facts you may not have known. But here's another fact you may not know. And this is an unknown. But this should concern you. If we don't try to get this resolved, and we're going to go back and let me write down the word resolution, because I want to cover this. But if we do not get this resolved soon, and those of you who are literally trying to prevent the LNC from doing its duty, you realize that ballot access in Michigan could be fucked? It's like that meme where it's you shooting Michigan ballot access and going, why did the LNC do that? We're trying to protect our ballot access. And that's for everybody. Now, some people may go, but can't you resolve it a different way? Can't you go to arbitration? Can't you go to mediation? So you're saying, if someone breaks into your house and steals your TV and you want it back, you who are the victim should be forced into some kind of arbitration with the thief? Or you're the bad guy? Now, that's not a great analogy, but I'm just trying to give you kind of the example. The Bible has a story about that, where a lady, I tell this story a lot because it's so apropos. Two women give birth to a baby. One of them rolls over her baby in her sleep and kills it. She's grief-stricken, quite obviously. But she becomes jealous of the woman who still has her child and claims that's her child. It quite obviously isn't. They go to King Solomon. And in order to show the folly, King Solomon goes, well, let's just cut the baby that's still alive in half. So they both end up with a dead baby. This other group, is so ass-mad about not getting their way with the Judicial Committee that they would rather we have a dead baby. But there have been numerous attempts to resolve this. But when you resolve things, you have to resolve it within the rules. In other words, you can't go, can't we just agree to meet each other like halfway and we both break the rules? But, that's not how organizational parliamentary bylaws ruled groups work. It's not like you and I, where we're the only two people to a beef, and I think you owe me $100 and you're like, no, I don't. And I'm just like, just to get this over with, give me 50 and we'll call it even. That's fine for two people. That doesn't work with organizations because members have rights. The legitimate board in Michigan, even if they want to, cannot arbitrate or mediate away the rights of other people. That you just can't do that. It is immoral, illegal, and against the bylaws. So it's just ignorant to say, well, can't they just both give a little? Even if this board wanted to, they can't, because it's not their rights. Just like I say, my rights aren't dependent upon your lack of fear. Neither are the rights of every member in Michigan. In theory, if every single person who had a right in Michigan signed off and said, I give Joe Blow the authority to do whatever it takes to resolve this situation, then yeah, maybe get every single person who has a membership right in Michigan to do that. You're not going to, because libertarians will always be that guy. But it's worse than that. Because the way their bylaws are written, it's not just their current dues payers that have rights. It's like I forgot what the time frame is, but it's something like if you were even a member, like in any like weird period of time, it's terrible bylaws. But the group of potential people with rights is pretty damn vast, and you probably couldn't even find all of them right now. So, it's just not possible. But there was a way to resolve that was really easy. And at first they did it. They called a special convention and then didn't go to it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine thinking, okay, I'm married to this person here and I want to marry somebody else. So in order to get a clean divorce from this person, we're going to go to mediation and we're going to agree to what the mediator says. And I demand mediation. And then when the day comes, I don't show up and I just go marry the other person anyway and turn into a bigamist. It's insane. And here's the funny thing. Everyone who's going, well, they had more people in Lansing. That is a completely not apples to apples. More people always come to something called an annual convention where they think they're voting on bylaws and board positions and everything else than they do to a special convention that has like 3 things on the agenda. So it's not apples to apples. But let's pretend it was. If that was true, they could have resolved this. All they had to do was show up in Wixom and win. Here's the funny thing. And I've said this all along, I think they could have. I think if they just did what they asked for, this would be over. There is one reason this is still going on, and it's them. Period. End of story. And then after all of this, they still had an option. Appeal to the National JC. And they didn't do that. But if you're one of these members of the party out here listening to me that still don't agree, do you realize that you can still appeal to the JC? So if you're off there shooting your mouth on Twitter, how about you do the work? If you think the LNC was wrong, use the contract that you have and appeal. Let me tell you, I thought the last LNC was wrong on Delaware. Did I just sit and shoot my mouth off? Well, I did shoot my mouth off, but I also did something. I filed an appeal with them, and we won. I did the same thing for Massachusetts, and initially, we lost. Had to do with timing and lots of other things, but ended up winning after convention. But initially, we lost. So, do the work. I did. I'm not telling you anything that I either haven't done or haven't been through. I've been through a shitty JC decision. I've defended affiliates where I thought the LNC did them wrong. Write me. I'll tell you how to file an appeal. I'm not going to write it for you because I think you're wrong, but I'll tell you the procedure. I told those people the procedure. And there's one last thing I'm going to get into, but I want to make sure I covered everything else first, and I want to take a look at the time. I don't want this to go on forever. Crap, we're already at 45 minutes. This is still brief. Lastly, before we get to some points here that I'm going to cover very briefly. There are some people. Okay, back up. Without a doubt, there are some great and respected libertarians on the other side of this issue in Michigan. You get very emotional when it's your own state. I think they're wrong. Simple as that. I think they're wrong. And they know how to file a JC appeal. Why they haven't is baffling. But one of those people happened to be a former attorney for the LNC. What's even funnier is not only is one of these people a former attorney for the LNC, it's the attorney that got the LNC the trademark. So, this rogue group is claiming that our trademark was never any good, that it was void from the very beginning, that it was foolish and stupid and borderline fraudulent to think you could even get a trademark. Really? Do you know what that says about that person who used to be the former LNC counsel, if your argument is true? Now, let me tell you, I don't believe your argument is true. A court's going to do what a court's going to do, but I do firmly believe, and I have now, the LNC is not going to file a lawsuit until they've consulted with an attorney. We have a favorable opinion. That's quite obvious. I'm not going to tell you what it is. So I do not believe that former LNC counsel got us a worthless trademark. But if you're claiming that he did, and this is someone on your side, you are claiming that person committed legal malpractice. Do you really want to go there? Now, I don't believe that. I want to make that clear. I think that person competently and professionally represented the LNC. But if you are correct and a case is filed and a judge immediately goes, "Ha! Are you crazy?" And says it's the most ridiculous thing they've ever seen, do you realize that means that potentially that former attorney and their firm committed legal malpractice, and the LNC would have a great legal malpractice case against them for not advising us properly and for filing an obviously silly trademark? You know that lawyers have a duty not to do frivolous things, that lawyers get in trouble if they file frivolous lawsuits or frivolous trademark applications. You realize that? Do you realize that you're shooting your own ally in the foot with that argument? Now, as I said, I believe that person acted professionally, competently, and got us a defensible trademark. That doesn't mean we will win, because courts, there's never a guarantee. But I certainly do not believe he did something that is obviously ridiculous. So you should think twice about what you're arguing, because what you are doing is stabbing that person in the back with your argument, and it's allegedly an ally. You don't connect the dots. People, use your noodles. Like, it's amazing to me, the shallowness of thinking. And there's some people who are listening to this right now going, "Oh, the light bulb just went off." Like, maybe that's not the best argument to make. What's funny is the rogue group's current attorney pretty much made that argument while attaching a memo from former LNC counsel. Where's my button?
Make it make sense.
Make it make sense, because it makes no sense. As I've said, that's like shooting yourself in the foot and going, "Look, I have another one." Boom. Now, I want to revisit just a couple arguments, and I'm not going to say who wrote this blog article because it doesn't matter. What matters is that a member asked me today if I could go over these points, because apparently these points are being raised in some private Discord server somewhere. I know where. I'm not mentioning it because it's not about the people. It's not about who asked. It's not about who mentioned it. It's about the points. I will say I already dealt with these points in part 1, so I'm going to go through them quite rapidly. It's a long article. We're not going to go through most of it, because let me tell you what this page says. Boo, Mises bad. Boo, I don't like Mises. They hurt my feelings. First half of this page, wow, Mises. Okay, I'm not dealing with that. And like, I think the last 2 pages are also Mises derangement. I want to deal with the parliamentary points. Now, the author of this article is a very, very smart person. Respectable, good libertarian. Not a parliamentarian, and it shows. You could be a brain surgeon, and I'm sure we have them in the party, and still make absolutely shitty parliamentary arguments because you're not a parliamentarian. Conversely, I may know decently, I'm not as good a parliamentarian as some people, but, I know it decently, know it enough to have gotten a credential, but you don't want me operating on your brain because I'm not a brain surgeon. And I'm going to encourage, again, since we already raised $15 for the party, remember, all super chats go to the Libertarian Party. And I'll send you a receipt showing it. We've gotten $15 already. I'm sending that donation off tonight. Okay, so here's the parliamentarian arguments. Again, I'm going to refer you to part 1, because these are, out of all the parliamentary arguments that, I don't want to say lay people, but non-parliamentarians have made, these are some of the worst. It says, the LEC, which is their XCOM, let's just say XCOM because Michigan uses different terminology, had already called and given notice of the July 2022 convention in Holland to nominate candidates. So rather than let the XCOM fill its vacancies, many members, I'm getting rid of the boo-hoo Mises parts, many members proposed it would be more fair to let the convention delegates vote to fill the vacancies since they were meeting soon anyway. That's not how it works. No, it's not fair to conduct unnoticed business at a special convention. And the JC ruled this was a special convention. That's not how it works. Those are your rules. I'm sorry you don't like them after the fact. It says the chair refused to consider this because it was against the bylaws. You can't do that. It was against the rules. And then this person says, I'm taking some stuff out because I'm not trying to identify the author of this article. A petition was circulated to authorize filling all vacancies at a special convention. Notice that this author concedes it was a special convention. I didn't notice that till right now. That's interesting. I know, and the LPMI chair is in chat, because I know you know this article. Did you notice that this author conceded it was a special convention? Because it says the bylaws say that 10% of the members can circulate a special convention, and the special convention was to occur at the same time and place as the Holland Convention. The petition was not circulated with enough time. That's problem number 1. It was circulated, if I remember correctly, and submitted to the board 8 days before the convention. You have the notice problem again. Even if you were going to say that whole 45, 60-day thing I dealt with in the other video, let's put all of that aside. You at least have to give the counties time to have delegates that want to go to consider this business. And they cannot designate delegates within 7 days of the convention. You have to give the board time to meet to issue, because the bylaws didn't authorize it to be done by email. Your notice requirements for your board to meet wouldn't have even allowed the board to meet in time, to notice to the delegates in time, to do a special convention, even without all of the other problems. I'm even saying, forget about the 45 and 60 days notice. You don't even have the 7 days for the counties who might go, oh, well, we want to go do this. This is the stinkiest argument yet. And there's been some stinkers. But there's more problems with this. While the LPM bylaws do say the members can petition for a special convention, it doesn't say they get to dictate the date. And it also doesn't say they get to dictate the place. Now, you might think that the XCOM are complete dicks for not doing it where and when the members want, but they don't have that right. You can't claim a right you don't have. It's amazing to me because the author of this article is super smart that this is so dumb. But it's not their area of expertise. And then the author just says something that's just absolutely wrong. And the author never bothered to appeal to the JC on this issue. The bylaws say a special convention called by petition must occur within 45 days. He's correct. It does say that. But are silent as to what notice must be given. No, they're not. There's just a honking contradiction in the bylaws. And the same people, or at least some of the same people that caused that contradiction, allegedly are the same ones that amended the bylaws for the rogue board. And I'm not telling them how, because I want them to figure it out for themselves, because it's so obvious, but it's like, hire a parliamentarian, people. The rogue board is already in violation of its own alleged bylaws, which is just freaking hilarious. And then it said the LPMI chair refused to give notice of the requested special convention, as he should have, because it wasn't timely. It's illegal. That's like saying, I asked him to punch someone in the face, and he refused. How a terrible person. Okay. And then goes on about the notice requirements. This person could have appealed to the JC on this issue and never did. And of all people, this author knows about JC appeals very well. Knows about them as well as I do. No excuse. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. Notice I dealt with that in the last video. So I do refer people to that video. God, these arguments are bad. Mises, whatever. Then this person is arguing about the notice requirements for the motion of no confidence and confuses the 14 days notice requirement to the XCOM to the longer notice requirement for it to be done at convention. The JC decided this. I get it. You don't like the JC decision. I might be giving a little bit of a clue as to who this author is, but most people don't know this arcana. The author of this has served on the National JC and rendered a highly controversial opinion. Do you think everyone liked that person's opinion? No. Did they need to accept it because it was the JC's opinion? Yes. Unless the JC didn't have jurisdiction or there was some other kind of argument made, which has never been made here. Well, actually, I don't want to say never. Some people say that the JC didn't have jurisdiction over the convention. That keeps getting changed. The bylaws are clear. And that's not the argument that this person is making, but never bothered appealing to the JC. Excuse me. Oh, and here's what's funnier. Let's pretend that I did not like the LPMI chair that got the vote of no confidence. Let's pretend I was on the side of the people who are like, get that jerk out of here. These people just don't think. They don't cross their eyes. There's a lot of complaining here that so-and-so didn't send notice promptly of this alleged motion of no confidence. So, you could have let the July convention just go. You still could have removed this person at the next XCOM meeting. What you could have done is even been double, triple safe. Because it wasn't a secret. It isn't as if Mr. Chatterton didn't tell the people at the July convention that this was out of order. And then all of a sudden this appeal just came out of the blue. We had no idea he disagreed with this. No, he disagreed with it at the time. So you were on notice that there was a potential issue. Even if you didn't agree with it, you want to know what I would have done? I would have done the elections at the convention. And then I would have had the board retake the votes. Because the board had the authority to do it. The XCOM could have sent out a notice and said, in the abundance of caution, we're given 14 days notice. This would have been very unorthodox, but 14 days notice that in the event that the vote at convention was not correct, that we are going and give notice that we're going to, if it turns out that there's a vacancy in chair, that we're going to fill that vacancy. And then they could have said, in the event that Mr. Chatterton was correct and this vote was wrong at convention, we are giving 14 days notice that we're going to redo that motion of no confidence, because they had the votes. Maybe they would have had to have let him vote, but there were ways around this. They could have done it then and just voted with proper notice to fill the vacancies with the people that were chosen at convention, so they couldn't be accused of not letting the delegates have their voice, which is their whole screaming fit right now. They could have covered their ass. That's what I would have done. That's what I would have done. Sorry that you're just not thinking things through like Mr. Yao, who gave his resignation without thinking it through. And then the author goes on about how Mr. Chatterton waited 4 months to appeal. He raised this point of order at the convention. Y'all were on notice. He has explained why he waited 4 months. He did not want to have his appeal be a distraction from the candidates for public office. That is a noble reason. Me personally, I would have appealed right away. But I understand Mr. Chatterton's choice. And it was a noble choice. But to complain about it without mentioning the reason, you're not strong manning your opponents. You're only giving the facts that you wish to. And that's a bad habit that the people on the other side of this issue have. As they, well, let me just put it bluntly, they've been lying to you. I'm not saying this person has, though I do think a lie by omission or an omission of a very relevant fact can be a species of deception. But not speaking of this person, but certain people on the rogue board have outright lied to you. Okay, the rest is a lot of boo-hoo Mises. Okay, so I dealt with the parliamentary arguments. There was only like 3 of them, and they all sucked. That is going to be it for this show. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes to see if there are any questions that I haven't addressed or I need to do a little asterisk explanation on from last show or this one. I know a question maybe. We realize that the executive committee of the National Party has authorized suit. When's that going to happen? I don't know. A good point. A point was made in chat that not only would an appeal have been a distraction, it could potentially have been grounds to toss LPMI candidates off the ballot. I didn't even think of that. Maybe I wouldn't have appealed right away if somebody had brought that to my attention. I would have put my desires under, I would have subordinated them to keeping candidates on the ballot. And here's your last opportunity. Again, a $15 donation is going to the National Party tonight. Anyone who gives anything in Super Chat, it is going to the National Party. Oh, there is one other thing I wanted to say, because Diana asked, why are there so many rogue groups? Because they don't like what happened at Reno, and none of them have faced any real consequences. The fact is, this is going to keep happening in state after state after state, and it could be your state next. And you will not like that. No matter what side of whatever caucus stupid bullshit you're on. It's not good for the state. Until someone finally gets a court order that says you can't do that, this is going to keep happening. Do you think we want to do this? We could have done it already in numerous other states, and we hadn't. But this, something else I forgot to say. Yeah, oh my goodness, James Gentleman gave a $33 super chat. So we now have $48 going to the National Party tonight once I get off this show. Thank you, sincerely. But anyway, and in case anyone's going to try to rat me out, super chats are gifts to me. What I do with my gifts is my business. I have said to my friends that I'm giving it to the National Party, but it's in my name. It's my donation from the gifts that are given to me. Which I've done before. Somebody asked what would I do if somebody did the maximum. I would do the happy dance. But something else I want to let you know, why the National Party's hand, in my opinion, is forced anyway. And I want to know what you think about this, defenders. This group has now filed false filings with the FEC. How are they false? In order to be a state-recognized committee with the FEC, you have to be part of the official structure of a recognized national party. The Libertarian Party is a recognized national party. This fake board is not the recognized state committee. Now, you might think we made the wrong decision, but it's a matter of factual record that they are not recognized by us. But they filed a statement with the FEC certifying that we recognize them. Oh my God, the minute you start filing fraudulent documents with the federal government, it's out of our hands. I didn't put the proverbial gun to the treasurer of the rogue group to file a false statement with the government. Do you want to know how serious that is? For one thing, it could be a $5,000 personal fine against that treasurer. That's the reason why a lot of state parties don't want to become FEC filers, because the fines are against the treasurer. They're not against the party. And right next to the digital signature is a certification that these statements are true under penalty, and it gives the United States Code. When So say somebody, we're going to do the story time again. Say somebody signed a document that required, in order for them to get a certain status, to be in a certain partnership with you personally. But you weren't in a partnership with this person. But you became aware that they signed off saying they were. It then becomes incumbent upon you to repudiate that, or you've just become a party to their fraud. Now that the National Party knows that this group signed a fraudulent document claiming an affiliation with us they don't have, we have to do something. We do not have a choice, because if they do something wrong, if they do something really disgusting, the entire party can be in trouble. All of you people could be in jeopardy. Do I think there's a huge chance of that? No. But it is our duty to protect this party. And they filed fraudulent documents with the FEC. Do you think that duopoly loves us so much that if there was ever wind of this, that our presidential candidate might not suffer? And you're defending this? Not anyone necessarily here. This is out to there. Shame on you. There are fraudulent documents with the FEC now. Even if the LNC didn't originally want to do anything, we would have to. And even if the party itself didn't, me as an officer of the party would have to. Whether the LNC agreed or not, I have a fiduciary duty as an officer of this party that if I know that the National Party has been implicated through false association with a fraudulent filing, I have to do something about it. I cannot ignore that as an officer of this party. So if you want to get ass mad about the government, get ass mad at them for forcing this. They didn't have to file that document, but they did. I don't know if they're raising federal money now, but if they are, that's potentially, what's the lowest degree of felony? I can't remember the degrees. It's like 5th degree felony or class D or whatever it might be. I did not force any of them to do that. Neither did anyone on the LNC. When you start fucking around with fundraising, you got to be careful. Listen, it's not a secret because it was splashed all over the news here that in Colorado, our former treasurer filed late reports. And you want to know what? We got fined because that's the system we're under. And we're making payments on that fine. Does it suck? Yes. But that's the game we signed up for. So I'm saying this, I wasn't part of that. I'm not on that board. I'm just a member here. But still, it sucks. That's why you got to be careful. But the thing with the FEC, it's not necessarily the party that gets in trouble. It's the treasurer personally. I'm not going to mention the treasurer's name. Anyone can look it up. But do you realize Mr./Mrs./they treasurer, because I'm not saying that to be sarcastic. I'm saying that because I'm trying not to give names or genders here. Do you realize that you might be subject to a $5,000 fine, and that has nothing to do with anyone else? That's your own doing. That's up to the federal government if they want to do that. It's not something I want. It's whether they want to. Do you realize that? Is it worth it? My God, people. But I'm not risking the National Party. I'm not risking us winking to false paperwork with the FEC for you. Good God. Okay. Anyway. Not to mention they tried to steal $40,000. I'm not sure what level of felony that is in the state of Michigan. And y'all know the way the law is. It doesn't even matter if the victim wants to prosecute. You've seen how criminal cases go. It's the state of X versus Jones because the state considers itself the victim. I mean, that's its own level of fucked up, but, you know, that's the system we're under. So I hope this gave some context. And if you think anyone on the LNC is happy about this, that this is what we want to do, yeah, and it is all because they hate the Mises Caucus. You want to know something? Let me tell you. We're now May, a year and something out from the next national convention. Do you want to know how fast that will go? You don't like the Mises Caucus? Show up at convention. And never mind the national convention. Most of this is about state stuff. Your state convention either has already happened and you lost, or you won, or it's coming up. Show up. But if you're defending this kind of shit, no, don't. And if you're defending this kind of shit, honestly, you should never be near a leadership position again, if you ever were. Because this is inexcusable fraud. And I wish there were other ways to handle. But me personally, I'm not letting this happen in another state. And that's exactly what's going to happen. You think this is about Michigan, and of course it is, but for me, ultimately, it's about Colorado. It's about your state. It's about Florida. It's about Texas. It's about California. It's about Washington. It's about Oregon. Like, I could just rattle them off. This is to protect the integrity of your state as well. And this merry group of assholes in Michigan just think that they can set some kind of precedent that could fuck you over, and make no mistake about it. That is, in fact, what is going on. And shame on anyone who's defending this. You might not like the route the LNC has taken. We have very limited options at this point because they had a way out. They still have a way out. You want me to tell you how this can end right now? I'll give it to you. They can dissolve their fake board. They could go back to their county affiliates, organize, go to the annual convention in July and win. July is what? I'm not good with math. That's why I'm not the treasurer. 3 months. They could stop their fraudulent activities right now. They could beg the mercy of the FEC, withdraw their fraudulent filings, go back to their county affiliates, organize, go to July and win. And you want to know what? Have a clean convention in July, and the LNC will recognize you, because there's no requirement in the national bylaws that the LNC likes who the delegates elect. Do you think there's not state chairs in this party that aren't my BFF? There's ones I love. There's ones I don't love so much. That's how we all are, isn't it? There's been times in Colorado I've loved the board. Times in Colorado I haven't liked the board. I never once thought I could just set up a parallel board. So that is it for this evening. I'm going to make it an even 50 because the number 48 is just driving me crazy. So I'm going to go and make the $50 donation once I get off the show. I do thank all of you. There's a couple more minutes if you want to raise that up a bit. Let me just take a sip, but I do thank everyone that's watching. And I hope you have an awesome night. To let you know what's coming up, we do need to finish LP history, the LP news. Whatever I get to by the end of April, we're moving on to the next one after that. But boy, God, I heard a delicious, and by delicious, I mean disgusting. I heard a delicious just soundbite today from Michael Knowles. If you don't think today's conservatives are just complete, I don't want to I don't want to say all of them, but conservatives like Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro. You know, Ben Shapiro said that trans people should have their guns taken away. Funny how Ben turned into or he said he'd be okay with that. He turned into a gun grabber, didn't he? Well, you want to know what, Ben? No one's going to cry when somebody says that people with your that your point of view is some kind of mental illness and you should have your guns taken away. And Michael Knowles today basically argued that the state has nothing to do with rights. That rights have nothing to do with politics. I think that's almost an exact quote. I about swallowed my tongue like someone was going to need to come in like I was having an epileptic seizure and grab my tongue to keep me from swallowing. I was like, excuse me? SpongeBob SquarePants? Like, what? So I'm going to be doing another show. This is going to be dealing with Knowles and Matt Walsh again, because Matt Walsh also said something really stupid. Matt Walsh did some commentary on the Bud Light Dylan Mulvaney situation. Now, I've said it before. I don't have an issue with trans people, but I do think Dylan Mulvaney has on woman face and mocks women. Like, I just think he's a walking, talking caricature of women, and I find him insulting. I'm not opposed to trans people. Him particularly, I find offensive. I find lots of non-trans people offensive. I find Matt Walsh offensive. But I'm going to defend Bud Light a little bit. Not entirely, but Matt Walsh misrepresented what their vice president of marketing said. He didn't entirely misrepresent what she said. And God damn you, Matt Walsh, for making me defend a wokester. But you want to know what? You have to correctly represent your opposition, even if it's opposition you don't agree with. That is the measure of integrity, that you properly represent other people's arguments. So Matt Walsh significantly misrepresented the position of the vice president of marketing for Bud Light. I don't like her. I don't agree with her decisions, but she deserves to have her arguments represented properly. So that will probably be the next show I do, taking down Mr. Knowles and rebutting Matt Walsh's misrepresentations. All right. I hope you have an awesome night, and I will see you soon. And thank you again, sincerely, for the donations to the National Party. Bye-bye.
What you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians, or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because they want to